I never thought a single cup of coffee could change the entire course of my life. At first, it was just another ordinary morning, the kind where everything feels predictable, like the world is running on a schedule you've already memorized. I walked into the small cafe on the corner, the one I had visited so many times before that the barista already knew my order. A latte, hot, extra foam, nothing unusual, nothing dramatic. But that morning, a small voice outside the cafe interrupted the rhythm of my routine. "Don't drink that coffee," a boy said. At first, I thought I misheard him. His voice was thin, raspy, almost drowned by the chatter of customers and the steady hum of the espresso machine. I glanced toward the door and saw him standing there. A boy no older than 11 or 12, clothes torn, hair tangled, a backpack slung over one shoulder like it had carried his entire life. His eyes were sharper than any child's should be, like he'd seen things most adults could never imagine. I tried to brush it off. Kids sometimes say strange things, especially kids who live on the street. But he didn't move, didn't laugh, didn't look away. He just repeated it, firmer this time. "Don't drink that coffee." Something in his tone made me pause. It wasn't the playful warning of a child trying to get attention. It was steady, almost desperate, as if he knew something I didn't. I picked up the cup the barista had placed on the counter, warm, familiar, safe. Yet suddenly it felt heavy in my hand, like the paper lid was hiding a secret. "Why not?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light, almost amused. The boy didn't answer right away. He just stared at the cup, then at me. There was a flicker of fear in his expression, quickly replaced by determination. He looked around nervously, as though someone might be watching, and then whispered, "Because it's not what you think it is." Now that was enough to send a chill down my spine. I set the cup back on the counter, more out of instinct than decision. The barista raised an eyebrow, clearly confused about why I was hesitating, but I ignored her. My attention was fixed on the boy. "Come outside," he said. "I'll explain." Every logical part of me screamed that this was ridiculous. Why should I listen to a homeless kid with dirt on his hands and a voice that cracked with hunger? Yet somehow, my legs moved before my brain could argue. I followed him out of the cafe, cup still untouched on the counter. The air outside was brisk, sharp enough to sting my lungs. The boy leaned against the brick wall, his backpack at his feet, and looked at me as though measuring whether I was worth the risk of honesty. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The street buzzed with morning traffic, car horns blending with the chatter of pedestrians. But between the two of us, there was only silence. Finally he said, "You don't know me, and I don't know you, but I've seen things in this city that most people pretend don't happen. I've heard things, and that coffee—" He broke off, biting his lip, as if the words themselves were dangerous. "Just trust me. Don't drink it." My heart thudded in my chest. 1,000 questions spun in my head. Was this some prank, a scam, or something darker? I thought about walking away, dismissing him as just another troubled kid with a wild imagination. But something about the way his voice trembled on the edge of certainty stopped me. "Then what should I do?" I asked carefully. He picked up his backpack, slinging it over his shoulder like he was preparing to run. His eyes darted to the cafe window, then back at me. "If you want to stay safe," he said, "follow me. And whatever happens, don't go back for that coffee." And then, without waiting for an answer, he started walking down the block, disappearing into the crowd, like a shadow swallowed by daylight. I stood frozen, torn between the comfort of the familiar cafe and the unknown path that stretched ahead. My untouched latte sat inside, growing colder by the second. My rational mind urged me to forget the boy, grab the cup, and continue with my morning. But my gut whispered something else, an echo of his warning that refused to let go. That was the moment my life stopped being ordinary. Because I chose to listen, I followed the boy. The boy walked quickly, weaving through the crowd with a kind of nervous urgency, like every second mattered. I struggled to keep up, dodging commuters with their coffee cups and briefcases, wondering what on earth I had gotten myself into. My shoes slapped against the pavement louder than they should have, every step reminding me that I was leaving behind the safety of my morning routine for something unknown. "Wait up," I called, but he didn't slow down. When he finally stopped, it was in front of a narrow alleyway tucked between a laundromat and an abandoned hardware store. He glanced around once more, then motioned for me to follow him inside. My instincts screamed against it. Alleys were the kind of places you avoided, not entered, but curiosity was already stronger than fear. The air grew colder as I stepped into the shadows. The boy crouched beside a stack of old milk crates, dropping his backpack onto the ground. He unzipped it carefully, like it contained something fragile, and pulled out a crumpled notebook with a cover that looked water-stained and torn. His fingers trembled slightly as he flipped it open. "I need you to believe me," he said, "because if you don't, you'll regret it." His words hung in the air, heavy and uncomfortable. I folded my arms, unsure how much patience I had for this. But then he turned the notebook around and showed me the first page. It was filled with drawings, rough sketches of coffee cups, mugs, and paper takeout containers, all shaded in black pencil. But what unsettled me wasn't the cups themselves, it was what was inside them. Dark swirls, jagged shapes, something that looked less like liquid and more like smoke trapped on the page. Underneath each drawing were words written in a shaky hand: "Not safe, poison, don't drink." My stomach tightened. "What is this?" "It's what I've seen," he whispered. "Every time I close my eyes." He turned another page, and this one made my skin crawl. A sketch of a person, stick-thin, hunched over with hollow eyes, reaching for a cup. The next drawing showed that same figure collapsing, the cup shattered beside them. Underneath, in jagged letters, "Too late." I swallowed hard. "Are you saying someone's putting poison in the coffee?" The boy shook his head quickly. "Not poison. Something worse. Something that doesn't just kill you. It changes you." For a moment I thought he was just spinning a tale born out of hunger and too many cold nights on the street. But the way he looked at me, dead serious, his eyes glinting with something between fear and knowledge, made me hesitate. "Listen," he said, leaning closer. "I don't know who's doing it or why, but I've seen people drink, and I've seen what happens after. They don't act the same. They forget things. They stop being themselves." The words prickled against my skin. "How do you know all this?" He bit his lip, hesitating, then whispered, "Because it happened to someone I knew." The silence between us thickened. I wanted to dismiss it as delusion, a story crafted by a boy desperate for attention or help. But part of me, the part that still remembered the way his voice cut through the cafe noise, steady and urgent, couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't lying. "What do you want from me?" I asked finally. His hand hovered over the notebook, as if protecting it. "I want you to help me stop it. You're not like the others." "You listened." I opened my mouth to protest, to tell him I wasn't the kind of person who chased conspiracies down alleyways. But before I could, a sudden noise interrupted us. A heavy thud at the alley's entrance. Both of us snapped our heads toward the sound. A man stood there, dressed in a black jacket, his face shadowed by a cap pulled low. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the boy, and his expression wasn't friendly. "There you are," the man said, his voice low but sharp, like a blade drawn from its sheath. The boy's face drained of color. He stuffed the notebook back into his bag in a rush, zipping it with clumsy fingers. "We have to go," he hissed. "Who is that?" I whispered. "Not someone you want to meet." Without waiting for me, he grabbed my wrist and pulled me deeper into the alley, past dumpsters and broken pallets. My heart pounded as footsteps echoed behind us. Steady, deliberate, closing in. We burst out the other side of the alley into a side street, the boy dragging me toward a chain-link fence. He scrambled up with the agility of someone who had done it 100 times before. I hesitated only a second before following, my palms scraping against the cold metal. By the time my feet hit the ground on the other side, the boy was already running again. I chased him, lungs burning, sneakers slapping against the cracked asphalt. Behind us, the man's footsteps grew fainter, but the dread he left in their wake clung to me like smoke. When we finally stopped, blocks away, both of us gasping for air, the boy turned to me with eyes wide and serious. "Now do you believe me?" he asked. I didn't answer, but the untouched cup of coffee waiting back in the cafe felt a million miles away, and for the first time I realized I might never drink coffee the same way again. We sat on a bench in a deserted park, both of us still panting from the run. The boy's backpack rested between his knees like a treasure chest he couldn't risk letting go of. His face was pale, but his eyes were burning with something fierce, fear mixed with determination. I rubbed my hands over my face, trying to make sense of everything. "You're going to have to explain," I said. "All of it." Slowly. He nodded, clutching the notebook tight. "That man back there, he's not the only one. There are others. They've been watching me ever since." He trailed off, biting down on the words like they were too bitter to speak. "Ever since what?" His voice cracked. "Ever since my brother drank it." The air seemed to still around us. My chest tightened. "He was older than me," the boy continued. "Stronger, smarter. He used to look out for me even when we had nothing. Then one day he came back with a cup from that same cafe." He paused, pressing the heels of his palms into his eyes. "He said it tasted strange, but he finished it anyway. That night he couldn't remember my name. By the next week he didn't remember who he was at all." I stared at him, my breath caught somewhere between disbelief and horror. "Are you saying he lost his memory from a cup of coffee?" The boy's voice dropped to a whisper. "Not just his memory, his self. He became hollow, like his body was there, but the part that made him him was gone. He followed people around like a shadow. Did whatever they told him. No questions, no fight, just empty." I wanted to laugh, to push the story away as too wild to be real, but there was no humor in his face. Only grief, raw and deep. "Where is he now?" I asked. The boy shook his head. "They took him. Same people who were after me. I haven't seen him since." I leaned back on the bench, the wood cold against my shoulders. 1,000 logical explanations tried to march through my mind. Drugs, mental illness, stress, malnutrition, but none of them explained the man in the alley. None of them explained the boy's desperate eyes. "Why me?" I asked finally. "Why warn me out of everyone in that cafe?" He studied me for a long time before answering. "Because you hesitated. Most people don't. They just drink." A chill ran down my spine. He wasn't wrong. If he hadn't spoken up, I would have downed that coffee without a second thought. Before I could respond, a noise behind us made both of us flinch, a rustle in the bushes. We turned, hearts racing, but it was only a stray cat darting across the grass. Still, the moment left us shaken. "We can't stay here," he said quickly. "They'll find us." "Then where?" He bit his lip considering. "There's a shelter near the river. I know the people there. It's not safe forever, but it'll give us a little time." I wanted to protest, to insist that I had a home, a job, a life that didn't involve running from mysterious men in alleys. But when I opened my mouth, no words came, because deep down I knew something had shifted the moment I didn't drink that coffee. Walking away wasn't an option anymore. "Fine," I said, standing. "Lead the way." The shelter turned out to be an old church repurposed with cots and patched windows. Inside, the air smelled faintly of dust and soup, and a few people glanced up at us before returning to their own quiet worlds. The boy greeted the woman at the front desk with a small nod, and she waved him through without question. Clearly, he had been here before. We found a corner near the back where the walls felt less drafty. The boy set his bag down and pulled out the notebook again, flipping to a section marked with bent pages. This time, instead of sketches, the pages were filled with names. Dozens of them, written in uneven lines. "What are these?" I asked. "People," he said. "The ones who changed." My throat went dry. Some of the names had dates beside them. Some didn't. You've been keeping track. I have to. If I don't, no one else will. They vanish, and people just forget they ever existed. I stared at the names, each one like a gravestone in ink. It was too much for one boy to carry. Yet he had. Do you have proof? I asked softly. Anything besides this notebook? His eyes flickered with frustration. Don't you get it? This is the proof. It's all I have. I didn't answer, because a part of me still wanted something concrete. A video, a photograph, something undeniable. But another part of me already knew I wasn't leaving this story behind. As night fell, the shelter grew quieter. The boy curled up against his backpack, his body finally surrendering to exhaustion. I sat awake longer, listening to the wind scrape against the windows, my mind tangled with questions I couldn't untangle. When I finally closed my eyes, sleep came heavy and restless. And in my dreams, I saw coffee cups, lined up in endless rows, each one steaming, each one whispering my name. I woke up with a start, the dream of endless coffee cups still clinging to my skin like sweat. For a moment I didn't know where I was. The cracked ceiling above me, the muffled snoring of strangers, the faint glow of an exit sign, it all felt foreign. Then I saw the boy curled against his backpack, and it came rushing back. The shelter, the warning, the names in the notebook. I sat up, stretching stiff muscles. Across the room, a man stirred, watching me with narrowed eyes before turning over again. Something about the way his gaze lingered made me uneasy. The boy blinked awake at my movement. "We can't stay too long," he murmured. His voice was hoarse with sleep, but still edged with urgency. I nodded, though part of me resented being dragged deeper into this strange orbit. I wanted my old life back, the one where coffee was just coffee, where strangers didn't chase us through alleys. But wanting didn't change reality. We left the shelter just after dawn. The streets were wet with last night's rain, the air smelling of asphalt and smoke. The boy led me down side roads, keeping his head low. I followed, torn between irritation and a strange growing loyalty. "Where are we going now?" I asked. "Someplace you need to see." After half an hour of weaving through unfamiliar streets, we stopped in front of a corner store. Its neon sign flickered, buzzing weakly. The boy's shoulders tensed as he pointed to the security camera above the door. "Last week," he whispered. "My brother came here. He bought something before he disappeared." The thought sent a ripple of cold through me. "You think the footage is still there?" He shrugged. "Maybe, but we can't just walk in and ask." I frowned. He was right, but the idea of breaking in, of digging for proof, was a line I wasn't sure I wanted to cross. Still, when he looked at me, pleading but determined, I felt the decision settle inside me like a stone. We went inside, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The clerk barely glanced at us. I bought a pack of gum I didn't want just to keep appearances. As we lingered, the boy nodded subtly toward the counter where a dusty monitor sat, showing 4 grainy camera feeds. My pulse quickened. If we could somehow get that footage. The boy tugged my sleeve. Later he mouthed, "Too risky now." We stepped back out into the street. But as the door closed behind us, I caught a glimpse of something on the screen, an image frozen in my mind. A boy older than the one beside me, standing at that very counter holding a cup. His eyes looked vacant, unfocused. My chest tightened. I almost stopped right there, but the boy pulled me along, his grip surprisingly strong for someone so thin. "Did you see?" I whispered. He nodded grimly. That was him. We walked faster, both of us too shaken to speak. My rational brain scrambled for explanations. Maybe his brother was just tired. Maybe the footage distorted. Maybe I was imagining things. But the knot in my gut said otherwise. By the time we reached another empty park, the boy was shaking. He sat heavily on a bench, pulling the notebook from his bag as if needing its weight. "They won't stop," he said. "Not until they've taken everyone." Everyone. My voice cracked. He met my eyes, his own full of an exhaustion far beyond his years. They test it on people no one notices. Homeless, lonely, the ones already invisible. And when it works, they move on to bigger crowds. The words hit me harder than I expected. I thought of the cafe full of strangers, all sipping their drinks without suspicion. I thought of myself, nearly joining them. Before I could answer, movement caught my eye. A man leaned casually against a lamppost across the street, a phone to his ear. At first glance, he was just another passerby. But his gaze flicked to us, too often, too sharp. "We need to go," I said quickly. The boy didn't argue. We slipped away, weaving through side streets again, the man's figure shrinking behind us, but never leaving my mind. Eventually, we ducked into a library. The air smelled of paper and polish, the silence pressing down heavy. We found a table in the back, hidden between shelves. The boy opened his notebook again, flipping to a blank page this time. He drew quickly, lines scratching the paper. When he slid it toward me, my stomach turned. It was the man from the lamppost. The details were sharp, the set of his jaw, the angle of his shoulders. "You've seen him before?" I asked. He nodded. "He was there when my brother changed." I swallowed hard. The library suddenly felt less safe, the shadows between shelves too deep. For the next hour we pretended to read. I traced titles I didn't care about. While my mind reeled, I wanted to believe there was a way out, a way back to normal. But the more I listened, the more I saw, the less that seemed possible. When we finally stepped outside, the sun was high, casting harsh light over the city, and there across the street was the man from the sketch. Not leaning now. Waiting. The boy froze. I grabbed his arm. "We run on 3. I whispered. 1, 2. We didn't make it to 3. The man pushed off the curb the instant our muscles tensed, his stride purposeful, his eyes locked on us. The boy yanked my arm, and we bolted, weaving into the crowd. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, drowning out the city noise. "Don't look back," the boy shouted. His voice was ragged, urgent. I didn't listen. I glanced over my shoulder. The man was faster than I expected, slipping through bodies like water around rocks, his expression calm, almost casual. That calmness terrified me more than a snarl would have. We darted into an alley, sneakers slapping against wet pavement. Garbage cans clattered as we knocked them aside, trying to slow him. The boy knew the maze of streets better than I did, pulling me left, right, left again, until I lost all sense of direction. Finally, we burst into a narrow back courtyard, boxed in on 3 sides. My stomach dropped. Dead end. The boy shoved his notebook into my hands. "If they catch me, you run. Don't let them take it." "What are you talking about?" I hissed. "We'll both run." Before I could finish, the man appeared at the mouth of the alley, blocking our exit. His breathing wasn't even labored. He straightened his jacket, then smiled faintly, as though greeting old friends. "Give it back," he said, his voice smooth, rehearsed. "That doesn't belong to you." The boy stepped in front of me, trembling but defiant. "It was my brother's. You can't have it." The man sighed, as though disappointed in a stubborn child. Then, without warning, he reached into his coat. Panic surged. I grabbed the boy's arm, ready to throw the notebook and run, but the man didn't pull a weapon. Instead, he held up a small vial filled with amber liquid. He uncorked it with a soft pop, the scent of bitter herbs, and something metallic drifting through the air. "Do you know what this is?" he asked. His eyes gleamed. Neither of us answered. "It looks harmless, doesn't it?" He tilted the vial, letting the liquid catch the light. "But one sip, and you'll understand why resistance is pointless." The boy's hand clenched around my sleeve. His whole body shook. "Show them," the man called suddenly. I spun. From the shadows at the far end of the courtyard, another figure emerged. My breath caught. It was a young woman, maybe early 20s, her clothes shabby but her movements wrong. Her steps were too deliberate, her eyes vacant like an unplugged screen. She walked toward us slowly, and as she drew closer, I noticed her lips moving in repetition. A phrase whispered over and over, "Drink and obey. Drink and obey." The boy's grip tightened painfully. "She's one of them." I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The woman reached the man, stopping beside him like a puppet awaiting strings. He offered her the vial. Without hesitation, she tilted her head back and swallowed. Her eyes fluttered. Then in a voice not quite her own, she said, "Tell me what you need. Bring me the notebook," the man commanded. She turned toward us, her steps quickening. Adrenaline roared through me. "Run." I shoved the boy behind me, clutching the notebook tight. The woman lunged, her strength shocking. She grabbed my wrist with bruising force. Her eyes were empty, but her grip was all too I struggled, heart hammering, until the boy slammed into her side with all his weight. She stumbled, enough for me to wrench free. Together we sprinted past the man, who didn't chase this time. He just watched, smiling, as though the real trap hadn't even been sprung yet. We didn't stop running until we collapsed in a alley blocks away, gasping for breath. My wrist throbbed where she had grabbed me, already blooming purple. The boy stared at the bruise, his face pale. "Now do you believe?" "Gay." I swallowed hard, unable to answer. My rational mind screamed for denial, but the echo of her voice, "Drink and obey," was burned into my skull. I opened the notebook, desperate for answers. Among the scrawled names and fragments of drawings, one page stood out. It was newer, the handwriting less shaky. It said only 3 words: "Trust no drink." The boy leaned against the wall, eyes glassy with exhaustion. "They'll come again. They always do. But now you've seen." I closed the notebook, the weight of it suddenly immense. My world had cracked open in the span of an hour. Coffee shops, vials, vacant eyes. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was real. And I had no idea how deep it went. We hid in an abandoned laundromat, the air thick with lint and rust. Machines lined the walls like silent witnesses, their doors open, their glass eyes cracked. The boy sat on a broken bench, his knees pulled to his chest, his breath still uneven. I pressed my back against the wall, trying to keep my shaking hands steady around the notebook. For a long time we didn't speak. The city outside roared on as if nothing had happened. Horns, footsteps, the occasional siren. In here it felt like a different world entirely. Finally the boy broke the silence. "You weren't supposed to see it yet." What was I supposed to see? My voice came out harsher than I intended, sharpened by fear. A stranger chasing us with bottles of whatever that was. A girl who looked like she'd been hollowed out from the inside. He didn't flinch. He just nodded, like my outrage confirmed something he already knew. "They make people drink it," he said quietly. "It makes you forget how to say no, makes you theirs." I rubbed my wrist where the woman had grabbed me. The bruise was darker now, throbbing with each heartbeat. "And you're telling me this happens all the time?" "All the time," he said. His eyes flicked to the notebook. "That's why we write it down, so we don't forget what's real." I opened the spiral again, flipping past the frantic scribbles until I reached the page marked with a corner fold. Inside, the words "Trust no drink" were surrounded by arrows pointing outward, each ending in a name. Some I recognized from the neighborhood: Mr. Weller, the man with the dog; Miss Harper, the retired teacher who waved from her porch. "Are you saying they're part of it?" I asked. The boy shook his head. "No, they're safe. The names are the ones who haven't changed yet, the ones who can help." The room tilted a little, as though the ground beneath my certainty had shifted. I sat down beside him, careful to keep my voice calm. "Why me? Why did you bring this to me?" He looked at me for a long time, his expression older than 11 years had any right to be. "Because you didn't look away when you saw me writing. Most people pretend not to notice. You didn't." I had no reply. His words lodged in my chest, heavy and unmovable. Outside, a door slammed. We both froze. Shadows moved across the street. Two figures in dark coats lingered near the laundromat window, their heads turning as if listening for something. The boy grabbed my sleeve, eyes wide. "They're here." I lowered my voice to a whisper. "How do they know where we are?" "They always know," he said, with the certainty of someone who'd been chased too many times. My heart pounded. The figures outside didn't enter. They just stood there waiting. One of them lifted a phone to his ear. The other tapped the glass of the window gently, once, twice, like a signal. The boy pulled a folded scrap of paper from his pocket and shoved it into my hand. "If they take me, you go here." I unfolded it. An address written in shaky pencil. Maple Street, number 17. No explanation. "What's there?" I whispered. "Someone who still remembers," he said. Before I could ask more, a sound shattered the air, a metallic screech as the laundromat's side door wrenched open. Not the front where the men waited, but the back. A woman stepped in carrying a grocery bag. She stopped when she saw us, blinking in surprise. "Joan?" she said. My name, in her voice, in this impossible place. It was Miss Harper, the retired teacher from our block. Her hair pinned back, her hands trembling slightly as she set down the bag. She glanced from me to the boy, then to the notebook in my lap. "You shouldn't have that," she whispered. "It paints a target bigger than you can imagine." The boy jumped up. "You told me you were safe." Miss Harper's eyes softened, grief swimming just beneath the surface. "I am safe. That doesn't mean I'm free." The figures outside tapped again, louder this time. My pulse raced. Miss Harper crossed the room and closed the back door behind her. She lowered her voice. "Listen carefully. They're not here for you. Not yet. They're here to remind me what happens if I forget the rules. You need to leave. Both of you. Tonight." The boy stepped closer. "Then come with us." She smiled sadly. "I already had my chance. You take yours." Before either of us could protest, she shoved the grocery bag into my arms. "Food. Water. Don't drink anything else. Maple Street, number 17. Tell them Harper still remembers." Her voice broke on the last word. Then she pushed us toward the side exit. We stumbled out into the night, the weight of the bag heavy against my chest, the address burning in my mind. The boy clutched the notebook like a lifeline. Behind us, through the cracked glass of the laundromat, I saw Miss Harper facing the two men as they finally stepped inside. And then the door slammed, cutting her from view. We ran again, but this time I knew it wasn't just running from danger. It was running towards something. A place, a truth, a decision I couldn't take back once it was made. Maple Street looked ordinary at first glance. Rows of houses lined with sagging porches, the kind of neighborhood where curtains moved when you walked past and porch lights flickered, even when no one was home. But as we approached number 17, the boy slowed down, his shoulders tense. The house itself seemed unremarkable: peeling paint, a crooked fence, a window half covered with foil. Yet the air felt heavier here, as though the street carried the weight of secrets too long unspoken. "You're sure?" I asked. The boy nodded. His hand clutched the notebook so tightly the spiral bent. "Harper said this was the place." I raised my hand and knocked. For a moment, nothing. Then the sound of locks. 1, 2, 3, turning. The door creaked open. An elderly man stood in the doorway. His frame was thin but upright, his eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. He studied us without speaking, his gaze lingering on the notebook. "She sent you," he said at last. Not a question. "Yes," I replied cautiously. "Miss Harper. She said you still remember." The man sighed and opened the door wider. "Then come in quickly. If they saw you on this street, you don't have much time." Inside, the house smelled faintly of cedar and dust. Bookshelves covered the walls, filled with binders, folders, and spiral notebooks, almost identical to the one I carried. A desk lamp illuminated a map pinned to the wall, dotted with colored pins and scribbled notes. The man closed the door, bolted it again, and turned to us. "I'm Mr. Alvarez. I used to work in city planning before I realized the plans weren't ours anymore." He motioned for us to sit. The boy perched on the edge of a chair, eyes scanning the map. I placed the grocery bag down and held out the notebook. "This belongs to him," I said, nodding at the boy, "but I think you know what's inside." Alvarez flipped it open, scanning quickly. His face hardened. "Yes, these are the signs. They're always the same. The drinks, the phrases, the way people stop resisting." Harper kept track too. We all did, until one by one they disappeared. I swallowed hard. Disappeared how? He looked at me, his eyes weary. They either surrendered or they stopped remembering why they shouldn't. The boy leaned forward. "But we're still here. We can stop it." Alvarez studied him for a long time, then smiled faintly. "You remind me of my grandson." He believed the same thing. He was right, for a while. The room fell silent. I wanted to ask what happened to the grandson, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I glanced at the map. Each colored pin seemed to mark a place in the city: cafes, parks, community centers, circles drawn around them like warning signs. Alvarez followed my gaze. "Distribution points," he explained. "They don't just sell coffee. They lace it slowly, carefully. Not enough to kill, just enough to bend." The boy frowned. "Why? What do they want?" Alvarez closed the notebook and set it on the desk. "Control. Not the kind you see in movies with soldiers and guns. The quieter kind. When people stop asking questions, when they obey without knowing why, that's when control is perfect. No rebellion. No noise. Just silence." I felt a chill crawl down my spine. "And you've been tracking this all alone?" "Not alone," he said. "Harper. A few others. But each time we get close, someone vanishes. I've lasted this long because I don't drink anything I didn't boil myself, and because I know how to stay invisible." The boy shook his head stubbornly. "We can't just hide. We have to fight." Alvarez's smile was sad. "Courage without caution is suicide." "But," he reached under the desk and pulled out a folder, thick with papers. "With the right evidence, we might have a chance. Courts won't listen, but records don't lie. If we document enough, someone will see." He slid the folder across the table. Inside were photos, receipts, even medical reports. People admitted to hospitals with strange symptoms, all traced back to one thing: coffee cups. I glanced at the boy. His eyes burned with determination. Suddenly a noise shattered the moment. The squeal of brakes outside. Headlights cut across the curtains. Alvarez's expression turned grim. "They followed you." Panic surged through me. "What do we do?" Alvarez moved quickly, pulling a trap door open in the floor beneath the rug. A narrow staircase descended into darkness. "Go, both of you. There's a tunnel that leads to the next street. Don't stop. Don't look back." The boy hesitated. "Come with us. I'll buy you time," Alvarez said firmly. "Someone has to hold them off." Before I could argue, pounding rattled the front door. Voices outside, sharp and commanding. Alvarez shoved the folder into my hands. "Take it. If they catch me, it won't matter. But if you keep running, maybe it will." His eyes locked on mine, filled with urgency. "Remember, Joan, memory is resistance. Never let them take it from you." The boy tugged my sleeve, pulling me toward the trap door. The pounding grew louder. The wood of the front door cracked. I took one last look at Alvarez, standing tall in his fragile frame, before descending into the darkness. The trap door closed above us, muffling the sound of breaking wood, of voices shouting. The tunnel smelled of earth and damp stone. The boy's flashlight flickered, casting long shadows. We moved quickly, hearts pounding. The folder pressed against my chest, like a second heartbeat. Somewhere above, the house groaned under invasion. Somewhere behind us, Alvarez stood alone, and somewhere ahead, down this endless tunnel, waited either salvation or the same silence that had swallowed everyone else. We didn't know which, but we kept moving. The tunnel seemed endless, a narrow vein carved beneath the city. Dirt walls brushed my shoulders, and the smell of damp earth clung to every breath. Our footsteps echoed faster with every sound from above: the shouts, the splintering wood, the thud of boots. I didn't want to imagine what was happening to Alvarez. The boy kept his flashlight steady, jaw clenched tight. He didn't look back once. I envied his resolve. My chest burned, not just from running, but from guilt. We had brought danger to Alvarez's door, and now he was paying the price. At last, the tunnel sloped upward. A wooden ladder led to a hatch. The boy climbed first, pressed his ear to the lid, then nodded. "It's clear." He pushed and cold night air spilled in. We emerged into an alley littered with broken bottles and newspaper scraps. The city hummed beyond. Traffic lights, distant sirens, the low roar of voices carried on wind. It was familiar yet strangely hostile, as if the streets themselves had learned to listen. "Where now?" I whispered. The boy pointed east. "We need to reach the library. That's where the others left things. If they didn't burn it yet." The folder Alvarez had given me felt heavier than paper. I tucked it into my coat, as if hiding it from the night. We slipped onto the sidewalk. Every face seemed suspect. Every passing car too slow. Street lamps buzzed overhead like insects. The boy walked quickly, head down, as though he knew the city's blind spots. I followed, trying to match his urgency without drawing attention. At the corner, a cafe glowed warm with yellow light. People inside laughed, sipped drinks, leaned close to whisper. The smell of roasted beans drifted out when someone opened the door, rich and inviting. For a moment my throat ached for the comfort of it, the simple ritual of a hot cup. Then I remembered Alvarez's map. The pins, the warnings. The boy noticed my hesitation and shook his head. "Don't even look at it too long," he muttered. "That's how they pull you in." We moved on. Halfway down the block, a black van turned the corner, headlights sweeping across us. My heart jumped. The boy grabbed my hand and yanked me into a laundromat. The hum of machines and the scent of detergent wrapped around us. People sat silently in plastic chairs, staring at clothes tumbling behind glass. None of them spoke. None even blinked at our sudden entrance. It felt wrong. Too still, too quiet. The boy's grip tightened. "They've been here." One woman finally turned her head toward us. Her eyes were glazed, her face expressionless. Slowly she raised a paper cup to her lips and drank. We bolted back onto the street before the silence could swallow us too. By the time we reached the library steps, sweat soaked through my shirt. The building loomed dark, its windows boarded on the lower level, but the doors surprisingly were unlocked. Inside, the air smelled of dust and old pages. Flashlights revealed rows of shelves draped in cobwebs, tables covered with abandoned books. The boy moved with purpose, weaving through aisles until he stopped at a section labeled Local History. He crouched, pulled at the bottom shelf, and revealed a hollow space. Inside were more notebooks. Dozens of them. "They kept records here," he whispered. "Every time someone noticed the patterns, they wrote it down. Harper, Alvarez, others, even kids like me. They wanted proof, in case one of us forgot." I knelt beside him, flipping through pages. Handwriting varied, slanted, blocky, childlike, but the words repeated: coffee, silence, memory control. Drawings of cups, sketches of maps, lists of names crossed out. One page made me freeze. It held my own address, a red circle drawn around it. Beside it a note: "Test site confirmed." My stomach twisted. They were watching me. The boy nodded. "They watch everyone. That's why I had to warn you." A sudden crash echoed through the library. Glass shattered. Heavy footsteps entered. Flashlights swept across shelves. "They found us," I hissed. The boy stuffed notebooks into his backpack, as many as it would hold. This way, we darted through aisles, past towering shelves, until we reached a back stairwell, down, then out into a service corridor that smelled of mildew. Voices followed, closer with every turn. At the exit, a chain hung across the door. I yanked it hard, metal clanging. The boy shoved from behind, and the rusted latch gave way. Cold air rushed in. We stumbled into another alley. Behind us footsteps thundered. Ahead, neon lights buzzed above a row of shuttered shops. "This way," the boy urged. But before we could move, the black van screeched to a stop at the end of the alley. Its headlights pinned us like prey. Doors slammed open. Figures in dark uniforms poured out, moving with terrifying precision. Trapped. The boy's hand found mine again. Small but steady. He looked up at me, eyes fierce despite the fear. "We can't let them take the notebooks. Promise me." I clutched the folder to my chest, his words burning into me like an oath. The figures advanced. Then from the rooftops, a sharp whistle cut the air. A shadow moved, swift, deliberate, and something crashed down between us and the approaching figures. Smoke billowed, thick and acrid. A voice hissed through the haze. "Run!" We didn't hesitate. Through smoke and shouts, we sprinted into the night, clutching the evidence, chased not only by the men in the van, but by the growing certainty that this city's heart was already poisoned. And somewhere above, unseen allies, or unseen enemies, had just revealed themselves. The smoke wrapped us like a curtain, sharp in my lungs, blinding my eyes. My fingers clung to the boy's sleeve, unwilling to let him vanish in the haze. We stumbled forward, guided only by the urgent command still ringing in my ears. "Run!" A hand seized my arm. I flinched, ready to fight, but the grip was firm without cruelty. Through the smoke, a figure in dark clothing pulled us toward a side door. I hadn't noticed. Metal scraped, hinges whined, and then we were dragged into a stairwell that smelled of rust and rainwater. The door slammed shut, muffling the shouts outside. "Move!" The voice belonged to a woman, low and clipped. She pushed back her hood, revealing sharp cheekbones, eyes the color of storm clouds. A scar cut across her jaw like a reminder of choices gone wrong. "If you want to live, follow me." I glanced at the boy. He nodded, not trusting words. Up the stairs we went, boots clanging on metal. The woman never slowed, never looked back until we burst onto a rooftop slick with recent rain. From here, the city spread out in fractured lights, neon signs, traffic veins, patches of shadow where secrets like to hide. The boy bent over, coughing. "Who are you?" "Someone who still remembers." Her gaze lingered on him longer than on me, as if she recognized something. "Name's Marin, and you just set half the city's dogs on your trail." I tightened my grip on the folder. "They already were." She smirked, not with humor but with the weariness of someone who's laughed at worse odds. "True, but now they'll double their leash." Below, the van's engine roared. Figures fanned out in the alley, scanning, shouting, but none looked up. Not yet. Marin crouched, pulled a coil of rope from her pack, and secured it to a pipe. "We don't stay in one place. They're trained for corners, not heights. We move like ghosts." She handed the rope to the boy first. "Hold tight, feet against the wall. Trust the rope, not your fear." His hands trembled, but he obeyed. Inch by inch, he descended the brick face until his shoes scraped the ground. Relief flashed across his face when he landed. My turn. The rope bit into my palms, rain making the wall slick. By the time I hit the pavement, my arms shook, but I was still upright. Marin followed, landing with a quiet grace that spoke of long practice. She yanked the rope down and stuffed it back into her pack. No traces. We hurried through narrow back streets, weaving between dumpsters and shuttered doors. At last, Marin ducked into an abandoned warehouse. Broken windows let in the city's hum, but inside it was dark and cavernous. Candles flickered along the floor. Around them sat a circle of people, men and women, young and old, some in ragged coats, others in business suits that had seen better days. All held notebooks, their pages bristling with scribbles and sketches. The boy inhaled sharply. "You're still here. You're still here." One man, gray-haired with ink-stained fingers, nodded. "Not all of us, but enough." I clutched the folder tighter. "Who are you?" Marin answered for them. The ones who refused the cups. The words hit like cold water. Every face in the circle bore the same look, the haunted steadiness of people who'd tasted the edge of silence and stepped back. A woman reached for the folder. May we? I hesitated, then handed it over. She opened it carefully, eyes scanning Alvarez's handwriting, the maps, the names. Her lips tightened. He's still fighting. He was, I corrected softly. A heavy silence followed, broken only by the boy's voice. We can't let it end with him. Marin's gaze sharpened. The boy's right. The evidence matters, but so does survival. If they catch you with this, they'll erase not just the papers, but the memory of them. You'll forget why you were running in the first place. Chills ran through me. I remembered the woman in the laundromat, her vacant stare as she sipped from her cup. What if that had been me? What do we do? I asked. The gray-haired man leaned forward. We scatter the truth, pieces in different hands. They can silence one voice. Maybe 10, but not all of us. And not the boy. His gaze softened at the child. He's the reminder. The boy straightened, shoulders squared with a bravery too large for his frame. I won't forget. Not ever. Before I could reply, a loud thud shook the warehouse. Windows rattled. Shouts echoed outside. Flashlights sliced through cracks in the boards. They found us. Marin drew a knife from her boot. Then we buy time. The circle erupted into motion. Papers shoved into bags. Candles snuffed. Footsteps pounding. Someone pushed a notebook into my hands. Another into the boy's. Marin grabbed my arm. There's a tunnel beneath the floor. Old sewer line. It'll take you to the river. Go. Don't stop until you see water. And you? She smirked again. That same humorless curve. I've lived too long in shadows to quit now. Go. Hands shoved us toward the trap door. The boy dropped into the darkness first, then me. The air below was damp, carrying the distant rush of water. Above, the sound of boots and breaking wood. Shouts. Then silence, sharp and heavy. I wanted to climb back, to help, to know. But the boy tugged my sleeve. We have to keep going. So we did, stumbling through the dark tunnel, guided by the faint glimmer of water ahead. My legs ached, my lungs burned, but the notebooks pressed to my chest felt like a lifeline. When at last we emerged by the river, the city lights shimmered on the surface like broken glass. The current whispered promises of escape, but also of no return. The boy looked at me, eyes wide, both afraid and resolute. They won't stop, will they? No, I admitted. But neither will we. And for the first time, I believed it. The river carried the night like a secret. Its surface rippled in silver lines under the half-moon, a restless mirror that refused to stay still. I crouched at the bank, clutching the notebook until the edges bent against my palms. Beside me, the boy hugged his to his chest as if it could beat in place of his heart. We listened. At first, only the water spoke. Then, faintly, the city behind us, the hum of engines, the bark of orders, the distant wail of sirens. They were searching. Always searching. We can't stay here, I whispered. The boy pointed downstream where the black outline of a barge cut across the glow. A single lantern burned on deck. There. It was reckless. It was also the only choice. We slid along the embankment, shoes sinking in mud, hearts pounding with every splash. When we reached the dock, I knocked against the hull with the rhythm Alvarez had once taught me: 3 short, 2 long, 1 short, his signal for trust. For a moment nothing. Then footsteps on wood. A man leaned over the rail, face shadowed. Who taught you that? Alvarez, I said. The lantern swung lower, revealing a face worn by weather and salt, eyes that had seen too much but hadn't yet surrendered. He studied me, then the boy. Get in, quick. We climbed aboard. The deck smelled of oil and rope. The man pulled the lantern close, his gaze falling on the notebooks. So the rumors are true. He left pieces. He left more than that, I said. He left a fight. The man nodded slowly. Then we'll carry it. Below deck, he gave us a corner with a blanket and a flask of water. The boy curled up but didn't sleep, staring at the notebook as if it might vanish the moment he blinked. I sat beside him, exhaustion tugging at my bones. "What if they find us here?" he asked. "Then we move again," I said. "That's what the truth does. It moves. They can chase it, but they can't cage it forever." He considered that, then whispered, "Promise me we won't drink from their cups." I placed my hand over his. "I promise." The barge rumbled to life, pushing away from the dock. The city lights receded, swallowed by fog and distance, ahead only dark water and the promise of somewhere else. For the first time in days, I allowed myself to close my eyes. When I woke, sunlight pressed through the porthole in fractured beams. The boy was still awake, tracing his finger along the cover of the notebook. Outside, the barge groaned against current. The man returned with bread and dried fruit. "We'll dock at Greyport. By nightfall. Safer than here. For a while." "Will there be others?" I asked. His mouth tightened, then softened. "Always. People who resist. People who remember. You'll find them if you look." I wanted to believe him. More than that, I needed to. The boy finally spoke. "What if we don't find them? What if it's just us?" "Then it's still enough," the man said. The words settled over us like armor. Night returned, draped in mist. Greyport rose ahead, cranes and warehouses outlined against the stars. The barge slid into a quiet dock, unseen. We disembarked. The man clasped my hand once, firm and final. "Keep the notebooks moving. They're seeds. Don't let them rot." "I won't," I said. He disappeared into the fog. The boy and I walked through narrow streets until we reached a small square. Lanterns glowed faintly. A woman waited at the fountain, holding a satchel. Her eyes flicked to the notebooks, then to us. "You made it," she said. "Alvarez sent us," I replied. She opened the satchel, showing more notebooks, more fragments of memory. "You're not alone. The circle grows." The boy exhaled, shoulders lowering as if he had been carrying the whole weight of silence. "Good," he whispered. We joined her by the fountain. Others emerged from shadow, faces worn, but eyes alive. Not many, but enough to remind me that truth didn't need numbers to breathe. The woman passed around paper, ink, whispered instructions. The plan was simple. Copy, scatter, repeat. The notebooks would spread like wildfire, hand to hand, city to city, each page a spark. As I bent over the paper, the boy leaned close. "Do you think they'll ever stop chasing us?" "Maybe," I said, dipping the pen. "But even if they don't, the story will run faster than they can." He smiled faintly, and for the first time it reached his eyes. Later, when the square emptied, and only the fountain kept speaking, I sat with him on the steps. The night was cool, stars unbroken by smoke. "What do you see?" I asked. He looked up. "Not cages." I followed his gaze. The sky stretched wide, untouchable. No leash long enough, no cup deep enough. Just air, endless and free. And in that moment, I knew the fight wasn't only survival, it was memory. It was the refusal to forget who we had been, and who we could still be. The boy closed his notebook carefully, as if tucking away a heartbeat. "We'll keep going," he said. "Yes," I replied, my voice steady. "We will." And the fountain's song, soft and constant, carried our vow into the night.